Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Linda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from ThoughtChange.com. I'm here on Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with my guest this week, Indra Singh. Indra is the creator of the Silent Moon Imaginarium, and we are going to talk about the power of the moon. So welcome, Indra.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda.
So I love that you work with the energy of the moon. The moon is kind of the little sister, I think, of the sun when people think of transformation and healing, but there's so much power in the moon.
So much power in the moon. Yeah, absolutely. Where do you start, really? Where do you start with the cycles and the different energy that comes from each cycle and from each wax and each wane? I'm not an astrologer, and I don't need to be an astrologer to work with the moon. That's one thing I have to say. I am not an astrologer, so I don't take people's sun signs or anything like that. But working with the moon stands on its own, I believe, and I've done it for a number of years now, and now I work with my flower essences and I make them and create them in moonlight. So that's where my big work comes from.
Well, that's pretty amazing, because most people that take vibrational essences or make their own do it in the sunlight. So whatever inspired you to start working with the moon energy?
Well, number one, I'm a rebel, so I don't really work in the box, okay? And this is quite a story, because when I started taking flower essences, batch flower essences, and also Alaskan essences, I was always drawn to those. They're just fabulous essences. I was training in the US, training to be a yoga teacher, and every lunchtime I'd walk across the road, and I was on 14th Street in Manhattan, and I'd walk across the road and I'd stand in this apothecary shop, and I would stare at all of Steve Johnson's, bless him, he's passed now, but all of Steve Johnson's Alaskan flower essences, and I would get the energy from those essences just by standing. And I didn't need to take any of them. I just felt the energy as a sensitive. And I would just go there and they would work on me, and I would move away. And I would do this every lunchtime, and I'd wonder why I was doing it. And I never got that I really needed to do this work myself. And although there's some flower essence practitioners will definitely say that it is not okay to make the essences in moonlight, because, can you believe it, there is no energy at nighttime. There is nothing going on in the evening to actually warm the water, to actually take away take the vibration from the flower itself. But I can't get with that at all, because I've done this work for, I'd say now I've been creating for about 3 years, and I have my own support groups. I have the groups, and I have the testimonials, and I have everything to prove that these work in the moon energy. And the moon energy is so powerful, because you don't need heat. You do not need heat to take vibration. That's one thing you don't need, So the energy of the moon and the elementals, I work a lot with elemental energy, fairy energy, and, the fae energy that's all around us. And it's so important to just honor that. Not only the daytime has energy, but also the nighttime has healing, which brings up our shadow energy, which is a very interesting thing as well, because I've noticed that by creating the moon shadow energy in the flowers, in the flower essences, that we start to see our contrasting sides of our nature. So when we take the flower essences, it's not necessarily all happy and wonderful. We start to see those parts of us that aren't necessarily too nice, and they come up for healing so that we can release them. That's why I call this work extremely deep work. The work that I do is very deep. So it's intense.
No, definitely. It's surprising to me a little bit that some people might disregard the power of the moon to work with water, when we already know its effect on the earth through tides, on the water in our own bodies.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. Now, the moon is usually associated with things like intuition and emotion and the unconscious. So it doesn't surprise me at all that it works on our shadow.
Absolutely. And I think this is what I really wanted to prove, or in a way just like work with to start with and see what would come from it. When I began it, I had no intention of really doing any of this other than to help myself. It was, I knew that flower essences helped me, so I wanted to create them. And then all of a sudden I was helping other people. And I was noticing how these essences were bringing up the most intense emotions in people, like jealousy and frustration, and why am I feeling this? And they'd come up to be healed, to be seen. And then once they were healed, or once they were brought to the surface, we were able to then look and see them and go, aha, now this is how we can twist and turn this round quickly. There's a wonderful Abraham Hicks quote, word that I use quite regularly, which is better feeling place. It's about getting yourself in that better feeling place as quick as you can, so you can change that contrasting emotion really quickly, that shadow emotion, because nobody wants to sit in their shadow, but we all have one.
We all have one. We just have to stand outside in the sun and watch our shadow on the ground to know that we all have a shadow.
We do.
So when people start taking the essences and their stuff comes up, do the essences actually help to kind of dissolve that shadow, or it's really just to bring it into the light so we're more aware?
Either. Now, at the moment, with the support group that I'm working with at the moment, we've noticed that the shadow that's come up with this particular essence, it's red columbine. We've noticed that it's been a sense of detachment and witnessing and observing that's been coming up. So when the emotions come up with most of the people in the group, they've been able to witness it as the observer. For some, it can dissipate. For others, it can come up and they can move it very quickly. And of course, you've got to be realistic. There are also the healing crises that do occur when you take flower essences, because they are an intense way of working, especially if you're sensitive. You'll be already tuned into that energy of nature. So when you take them, there can be healing crises. And all I ever say is, that's great. You're releasing. Reduce the dose. It's like homeopathy, reduce the dose or come off it until you've calmed down, and then either go back on it again or don't touch it anymore. Sometimes one drop, like you said to me, one drop's enough.
And it is a way to notice that they're doing something. For some people, that flower essences are very subtle. The energy is very subtle. And if they're not used to kind of tuning in or paying attention to how they feel inside themselves, sometimes they have a hard time noticing, and yet other people around them may notice a shift.
So true. That is so true. What's going on with you? Nothing. That's why I get people to journal. I always say to people, find a creative way to express yourself, ideally through journaling if you can, or drawing pictures, because I notice that it can be so subtle that people will think nothing's changing. But if you look back in your journal, you'll see that a lot has changed. And I always recommend that people do that. And you also don't have to take them internally. You can drop them in the bath, because they'll work energetically on the auric field as well. So if you don't like taking things, then, or if you have an allergy to alcohol, I also make them without the alcohol base as well. But it's a good way of experimenting. Put them in the bath as well and see.
Or misting.
Oh, misting. Yeah, absolutely. Misting's good to have them in your space.
So you have these beautiful essences that have been created in the moonlight. Do you recommend using them along with the moon cycles?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, definitely. I have moon cards, which on the moon cards are the essences that people can use in those particular moon phases of the cycle. So definitely, yes. But, as we change and as our planet shifts and changes, the essences also shift and change. I do have one essence that I made recently by sun and moon energy. And it was my very first one that I did make in the sun and moon energy. And that was dandelion. And I only made that last week. So that's the first one I've done. in sun and moon energy. We did it over a longer period of time, but the rest are all done in the moonlight.
And so, how do you determine what flower brings out what emotion or should be used for what particular aspect?
This is where my intuition comes in, because I sit with the energy of the flower. So I sit with the flower and I connect with the flower. So it's quite funny because, as you know, nature is not predictable. So every year I'll have a loose plan around autumn time, winter time, because obviously my busiest time is around now and in the summer. What I think I would like to create. However, nature usually changes my path and has done already this year. So I get drawn. I didn't know I was going to create dandelion last week, but when I woke up one morning and I looked outside, there was these huge sunshine dandelions. I've never seen anything like them, just sat there in my yard. And I knew. So I work with the flower first. I connect with the flower. I tune into the flower and see what's going on and whether I need to pick the flower or whether I need to just work with the flower on the stem. Some allow you to pick it, some don't like it. So I always work with respect with the nature. And then I make it over a 24-hour period, or, you know, over the moon phase, a particular moon phase, if it's just the moon essence. And then I always give back to the plant. So when I've created the essence, I give back to the plant to say thank you. Yeah.
I am a little curious because a dandelion has a bit of a bad rap, but it's a fantastic like blood purifier and good for your liver. I'm curious what the message came through that it would be good for, or do you have to actually create the essence and then take it and then you get that intuitive hit?
I also get told either one or the other. Yeah. So I either get told to do that. It's a really good thing to bring up, Linda, because I either get told to create it and take it and feel it for myself. But usually, more often than not, I sit with it and beforehand and then work out, you know, what's going on here. And often they'll just ping up and go, woo, they're here. The same happened with the red columbine. It came up last year. I was sat outside. I was feeling intensely emotion and really kind of low in my mood. And I turned around and this beautiful pink, almost like Triffid looking flower was sort of sat there. But going back to dandelion is all about the energy of slowing down and just taking your time and just being in your present state and not rushing around and just allowing yourself to be in balance and be in harmony with everything that's going on. The chakra essence as well, with it being very much yellow and into that in the sunlight and the moonlight as well. So very much about balance.
I love that, Indra. It's a little bit of a dichotomy going on in my head because the dandelion doesn't have a long life as a beautiful yellow flower before it turns to seed. And yet, because its lifespan is so short, I could understand how it would be so important to slow down and really, really savor every moment.
Yeah. And it's very much about watching time as well, not being concerned too much with pushing through time. So that comes up as well. Yeah, very much.
I think the whole world could use that.
It's often why they grow. This year in the UK, they are huge. They're so bright. They're like mini sunshines all over the grass. They're just beautiful. But they've gone now. They've gone already. So very fast.
Wow, fantastic, fantastic. So aside from the essences, do you have any recommendations for the listeners about how they could incorporate the moon healing and transformative power and its ability to really help you tap into intuition so that they can start shifting things for themselves?
Absolutely, yeah. So I have 6 magical moon rituals that I created just by doing my own work with the moon. And I give these away to people who, you know, want to work with moon energy, create ritual, but are often not really sure how. So this is I like to say to people, this is your own creative project. Okay. So take them and take my advice in them, but make them your own as well, and be creative with them. So I have those. They're online, and they're a lovely gift just to take and run with, and just, for the new moon and for the full moon. The new moon is obviously the time of when we're creating the new, we're starting again. And the full moon is that time of blooming, when we're open to acceptance, and the big stuff is happening before we go back into the wane again. So that's the height of the moon cycle. So I give all that information in the 6 magical moon rituals, and yeah, take them and run with them and create with them. I'd love to hear what people do with them. It'd be great, to see how people create their own world with them.
I think that's fantastic, and I'll make sure to put a link in the show notes. I'd also like to say that really ritual has the power that you give it. Right?
Yes.
Anything can be a ritual if you have that clarity and purity of intent.
Mm.
So it would be very fun to kind of experiment and make them your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Creation is just so important. We all are creators, and so it's really nice to do that in a creative way.
And so we are. And Indra, perhaps you could just maybe say a little something about how people could choose what essences would be good for them, whether it's the moon essences or the Bach flower essences or any of the other essences.
Yes, absolutely. So when you choose an essence, and this is any modality of essences, whether that's mine or all Alaskan or wherever you choose, is that I always say to it's quite funny, don't go in there and read too much, because I find that when people read too much of anything with flower essences, they need every flower essence that's on that website. And I know, because I used to, oh my God, what's going on? I just need them all. So it's really good if you just sort of scan a website or scan the words and go with the first one that draws your attention. And I always say to people and my own clients is, please, my big thing is about getting people to use their intuition and stop relying on other people to tell them what they need, but to listen to themselves inside, because you know what you need. So just have a look and don't double check, don't question yourself. Go with the first one that draws your heart, not your head. That's my advice.
And would you suggest people use one essence at a time as compared to maybe 2 or 3 or 5?
Well, actually, with my one-to-ones, I people have up to 7 in one bottle. It depends on what is going on for them, but it depends on how you work. If you want to see which ones are working, then it's advisable to take one at a time. If you combine essences, they work very differently to if you take them individually, because sometimes they just require one of something else to actually do the job for you. So it is an experiment. It's an experiment if you're working on your own. It's a big experiment. And it's like anything, it takes time, but it works. So, that's the way to go for it. If you want to do it, you just start at one and then feel it, see how it feels, and then go from there. I'm always open to questions if people want to ask.
Glad you said that it takes time, because there are a lot of people in the alternative world that, they're looking for that magic button, right?
Absolutely.
And it's taken us so long to accumulate all of this baggage or emotional stuff, whatever you want to call it, that, sometimes it might be a little unrealistic to think one something of anything could bring you freedom, complete freedom. So when people start working with essences, I would suspect it could really depend on each person individually, how quickly they move through, how deeply ingrained that part of their shadow is.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. It takes time. And also whether they're on medication. You can still take them when you're on medication. It's just that it can take longer as well. Because, if you think about all the layers, I always visualize it like an onion, peeling away onion layers, trying to get to our center. And we've got to enjoy the journey along the way, It's about the journey, not the destination. And that's so important. And I think what I've seen is through working with people with flower essences is that I've kind of got them to transform that and not rush and just say, it's enjoy the process rather than thinking I have to get there. Because when you get there, you're not even going to want that. You're going to want something else anyway. So,
So true. So true.
so enjoy the process as it go, as you go along, going with the flowing, just flow.
And so have you found there are any contraindications to taking the essences, or maybe some things they shouldn't be taken with?
I say with the essences, if you are allergic to alcohol, then I can certainly create them with vegetable glycerine. They don't last as long, or apple cider vinegar. They don't taste as nice, but they still have a profound effect, but they don't last. So they need to be used quite quickly, which is why I preserve in 40% vodka. It's the cleanest alcohol possible to actually preserve flower essences in. And I haven't come across anybody in the time that I've been creating them and working with them that there's been an issue with anybody. And I have worked with people who are on antidepressants and some forms of drugs for their mental health, but I've never ever experienced anybody have any issues other than positive. And I tend to attract the people who really want to do the work anyway, the ones that have had enough and they don't want to take it anymore. They just want to start to work on themselves, and nothing else matters. So they're prepared already to really go down that route, and they know that it takes time. So no, I think my answer to your question is no, I haven't come across anything.
Oh, fantastic. Indra, you talk about the moon shadow.
Mm.
Why don't you just tease us a little bit with what you mean by that?
Well, the moon shadow for me is the side of us really that is well, it can be classed as new moon energy. It can be classed as that new time, that dark time when we're in our dark moon, in our energy of internal. It's the internal time when we go in, when we allow ourselves to go in. I also call it the crone energy as well, which is one of the aspects of the female. Is the time for inner wisdom. It's the time for really just honoring who and what we are. Using the word shadow can sometimes sound a bit negative, but I don't think so. I kind of like that. It's the internal stuff. It's when we want to really express our go inwards and then take that inward journey and bring it out into the world. So I also relate it to sort of autumn winter time when crone is at her height, when we have to go in, when we have to look, we have to see what's going on and just honor ourselves in that space. So that's how I see the moon shadow. I see it as a real internal journey, as a walk through into ourselves.
And it's not all negative. A lot of people associate shadow with negative, but there's some beautiful, beautiful gifts in there too.
Absolutely. I also call it I use this word, this phrase a lot, because I like to say wonderful mess, because the moon shadow to me is very much about our wonderful mess. It's about the parts of us that we maybe don't like so much, but we have to embrace them as a wonderful part of who we are. And once we start to embrace those parts of who we are, those messy bits of us, we can really start to see ourselves for our wholeness. And not only that, people can start to accept us in our wholeness as well, which is so important. How can you be yourself if you don't accept the other side of you?
How can other people accept us if we can't accept ourselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it's been absolutely delightful chatting with you today, Indra. Thank you so much for being our guest.
You're
Would
welcome.
you like to share your contact info?
Yeah, so I am Indra Singh at www.silent-moon.co.uk. And you can also collect the 6 magical moon rituals at www.theimaginarium.love.
Fantastic. Thank you for watching this episode of Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. We're on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Anchor.fm, and we're just new on Podcoin. You can download the app and start collecting points for all your podcast listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.